They are basically photographs of pieces of work or details of. They do have an independent existence as postcards. And as David Bellingham pointed out in his rather wonderful little text, one of the particular capacities of a postcard is that you never get the whole story at the same time. You have to kind of flip it over. Here's the story, here's the image, here's the story, here's the image. That happens even when it is not an artwork. Somebody's writing to you, And because of what we know from Heraclitus, you can't step twice into the same river. The more you flip it, the more the kind of more it develops, more it sort of lives, maybe. Mm-hmm. We stick postcards on the wall with blue tack, but it does have that back. All of these things, that's how they were selected. It's not that, that's how all my work happens. But in this exhibition, all of these things happened. The John Cage piece there is a sort of history to it. But it sort of happened, and even the photograph happened. The photographer who was kind of, hovering sort of around me with a camera when I was doing this live on radio, my version of John Cage is 4 minutes 33 seconds, and the technician brought his father's watch, and I said, not now, no photography now, but there was plenty of noise, which was actually the whole idea. It was a very noisy version of it, in the middle of an art fair. Very noisy version of it. But I said, I still don't want you to take any pictures. I have to concentrate, and I made some kind of cuts of gold, So we are there, 4 minutes 33 seconds, click. And I'm so chuffed with myself, and I say, look, that's how good I am. It's exactly on the dot, and he takes the picture. Now the work actually is the stopped watch, as it is stopped here. That's the work. That's the object. Yeah. If you want, this is a documentary photograph from a performance or a concert. That becomes a postcard, which is another object and another kind of way that because of the way you distribute them, because of I do use them to postcards. Mm-hmm. I do write on them, I do send them to people. Because of the way we distribute them, it's a kind of another form, but it's not a hierarchy, but it does lose something. It does not have the kind of sense that, wow, how did you find that? How did you notice that? What I find quite sort of interesting, but I haven't digested it yet, is just the scale. Even on the postcards, the things are sometimes bigger than actually what is, the rose or the pencils are actually bigger than what the actual object is. And so even one-to-one photograph of a small thing kind of has a sense of scale already. And when they sort of are blown up to this size, which is about as much as the digital files will cope with, they become something really quite interesting. I'm not quite sure that I know what it is, but when Malcolm came up with it, I kind of anticipated that something was interesting was going to happen. So that's why I said, well, all right, let's do it, and let's select it this way, and let's call it small sculptures. I kind of like the idea of small sculpture, big photograph. It doesn't really, small sculpture. It's like, it's like plastic inflatables or something, maybe. There are things that happen here that would not quite happen if we brought these objects together. One is actually 2 hours sort of details of an installation, but they're objects enough. These 6 things, and had them in this room. Something else, very different, would be happening, I'm pretty sure, than what's happening with the pictures. Being brought all at the same level, all together, being put in the context of photography. I find it hilarious, not only context of photography, I am into words and into language. Now we are sitting in a gallery. On the wall in the gallery, there is a large picture of an old cigarette packet, which I had picked up 10 years ago more, from the street somewhere in Budapest. And it's been kind of now, talking of hierarchy, raised both sort of in the conceptual sense. It has become artwork since then, and in fact artwork that is reproduced and disseminated and then kind of scaled up, and God knows what. But also in this absolutely beautiful, hilarious way. The gallery is called Street Level and the address is 48 King Street, first floor. It's absolutely brilliant. The street level on the first floor. So things like this would not necessarily for me be quite kind of, wouldn't have such a big kind of part to play if the works themselves were. But that's one thing. The second thing is they are all, I think I already said that, they are all kind of brought onto this kind of uniform standard. Another thing is they kind of begin to tell you various things that again are for me absolutely not conscious. They do evidently happen. It's sort of, something subconscious, but maybe in that kind of thinking about the pictures as postcards, as this is, so far, what my familiarity with them is, I have not noticed. Because one thing about postcards is they go into the world one by one, in different directions, for instance. And now when I look at it, I just suddenly realized everything except one piece is about text upside down or back to front, or not about, has a text back upside down, back to front, this way up or whatever. I have made a lot of work with used pencils because I'm really interested in the idea that it's really the bit that is no longer there that really counts. That's the bit that, things were drawn with and written and so on. So when you find a fragment of a pencil, I started with this years ago, picking them up and keeping them and collecting them. And what you have found is the bit which doesn't have history yet, I collect also odd gloves when I find them in the street. Because I like the idea that when you pick up a glove, somehow it's more lost than before you found it, because it's one of a pair, and so it's even more disunited.
Every cigarette break from October 07 to March 09.
So I said, I'll document every single cigarette I take, and we were just putting them onto the website, one by one. And there are a number of ideas in it when you begin to think about it. Partly it's about this mythology that artists always work. You work even if you don't, the creative mind never stops doing its good work. But partly it's the opposite of it. Because in fact, what are you doing when you are hanging with a kind of bunch of Belgians waiting for somebody to actually bring a screwdriver so that you can start, and nothing, which actually was the case in Shanghai, where nothing is ever happening because nobody knows where the screwdriver is, sort of thing. And so when you are not smoking, when somebody finally did bring a screwdriver, the work is actually pretty tedious. And so if the work is, as we tend to think of it, if the artist's work is the kind of creative bit of it, then maybe the only kind of semi-creative moment is when you are not, screwing things onto the wall or sitting in somebody's office. As a sort of, it's like a trail I leave behind or something. On the other hand, the longer I do it, the more it becomes really work, And so I kind of wonder, it's already beginning to happen, that sometimes I take kind of a cigarette break from taking cigarette breaks.